At 2 p.m. on January 26, 1945, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Leon Murphy crouched in a shallow, ice-rimmed foxhole near Holtz, France. The air was so cold it bit exposed skin instantly. Snow smothered the landscape in a dead, white silence, until the trees ahead began to move. 6 German panzer tanks rumbled out of the tree line 1,000 yards in front of him. Murphy, only 19 years old, hardened by 18 months of non-stop combat, credited with killing over 240 enemy soldiers, knew exactly what this meant. The Wehrmacht wasn't probing. They were coming to retake the Bois de Redemption, and they were coming heavy. 6 tanks. An estimated 250 infantry in winter camouflage. Standard German doctrine: armor leads, infantry floods in behind, and American positions fall apart when the panzers close the distance. But not today. Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment held that frozen clearing with exactly 40 exhausted, frostbitten men. The temperature hovered at 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Their reinforcements were nowhere near the front yet. 2nd Battalion was still miles behind. Their orders were brutally simple: hold the position. Yesterday, Company B had lost 102 men. Every officer except Murphy was dead or wounded. The 40 men left were the battered remains of a full-strength rifle company of 187. All night they tried to carve foxholes into the iron-hard frozen ground. They barely scratched the surface. Murphy positioned his only armor support, 2 M10 tank destroyers, along a narrow dirt road. He knew their specs as well as his own initials: 3-inch gun, open-top turret, diesel engine. Good against light armor. Outclassed by almost everything Germany fielded in 1945. He also had 5 armored half-tracks fanned out in a crude defensive arc. But 6 tanks? Those were almost certainly Panzer IVs or worse, Panthers. Either one could rip through an M10 before the American gunners even got a clean shot. Behind Murphy sat the headquarters of the entire 3rd Infantry Division, command posts, supply lines, artillery staging points. If Company B broke here, the entire American line in the Colmar pocket would collapse. The Germans still held 20,000 troops in the pocket. If they broke out, they could smash into the flank of the U.S. 7th Army and even swing around into Patton's 3rd Army. The Allies could lose Strasbourg. The war could drag on for months. Murphy took one look at the terrain. The clearing in front of him was perfect for defense, 400 yards wide, 600 deep, with nowhere to hide. A natural killing ground. But his men were too few, too exposed, and wearing dark green uniforms that stood out against the snow like ink on paper. At 1:58 p.m., Murphy contacted battalion headquarters. Fire mission able. Coordinates were already logged. 8 105 mm howitzers stood ready to hammer anything he marked. At 2 p.m., the German barrage began. Shells thundered across the American line. One exploded in a tree above a machine gun team, shredding 2 soldiers instantly. Another slammed directly into the left flank M10. Flames roared skyward as the crew bailed out, sprinting for the woods. Murphy stared through binoculars. The German tanks came on slow and confident. Infantry trailed 50 yards behind in perfect formations. They knew they had the numbers. They knew they had the firepower. And now they knew. Someone on the American side was shooting back. If you want to see how Audie Murphy, just one young lieutenant, held back 250 German infantry and 6 panzer tanks with nothing but grit, fury, and a .50 cal machine gun on a burning tank destroyer, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten battlefield stories. And if you're new here, subscribe so you never miss one. At 2 p.m., Murphy ordered his men to fall back to secondary defensive lines 150 yards behind the treeline. The clearing ahead would become a kill zone, but someone had to stay forward to direct the artillery fire. Someone had to keep the phone line alive. Murphy stayed. His command post was nothing but a shallow depression in the ice. The field telephone sat on a wooden crate, its single fragile wire stretching 200 yards back to battalion HQ. At 2:03 p.m., Murphy spoke the words that would shape the next hour. Fire mission able. Execute. 18 seconds later, 8 American howitzers screamed their fury across the clearing, landing dead center on the German staging point. But the tanks kept rolling. By 2:07 p.m., the panzers were 600 yards out. Through the smoke, Murphy confirmed most were Panzer IV-H models, long-barreled 75mm guns, 80mm frontal armor. The 6th tank might be a Panther. Hard to tell in the blizzard of artillery smoke. The surviving M10 beside him was burning wildly, flames licking along the turret ring. The crew had long abandoned it. But something caught Murphy's eye. The turret-mounted .50 cal Browning was still intact. Ammo belt still loaded. Still ready. The Germans hit 400 yards. Murphy made his decision. He grabbed the telephone handset, slung the wire around his shoulder, and sprinted, crawled, dragged himself toward the burning M10. Heat blasted his face. The metal deck scorched through his boots. He climbed onto the rear plate, smoke coiling around him, flames roaring just feet away. The .50 cal sat waiting for him. He swung it toward the advancing German infantry, checked the belt, 105 rounds ready, for more boxes on the deck. Then he squeezed the butterfly trigger. The Browning exploded to life. Bullets screamed across the snow, ripping into German infantry formations with terrifying power. Tracers stitched the white ground. Soldiers fell, scrambled, crawled for cover, but they kept coming. Murphy fired in disciplined bursts. He counted his rounds. Every pull of the trigger found a target. At 2:13 p.m., German infantry crammed into a drainage ditch just 300 yards away. Murphy hosed the ditch with .50 cal fire. Bodies collapsed. Snow turned crimson. He kept firing while holding the phone pressed between his cheek and shoulder, shouting artillery corrections. Drop 50. Fire for effect. At 2:16 p.m., the tanks pushed forward again, firing their 75mm guns directly at him. Shells detonated all around the M10. Shrapnel tore through the air. One blast threw dirt and metal across the burning hull. Still, Murphy held the line. At 2:19 p.m., a German squad tried flanking him. Murphy pivoted the .50 cal and cut them down at 75 yards. Shrapnel ripped into his right leg moments later. Blood filled his boot. He ignored it. At 2:23 p.m., he did the unthinkable. He called artillery onto his own position. Fire on my coordinates. Danger close. Battalion HQ hesitated. Murphy insisted. Shells rained down just ahead of him, obliterating wave after wave of German infantry. For 40 minutes, Murphy held his ground on that burning M10. Reloading belts with shaking hands. Burning his palms on overheated spade grips. His uniform smoking. His leg bleeding. His face blackened with powder. By 2:09 p.m., he had killed somewhere around 80 enemy troops himself. The German advance, once so confident, stalled completely. Infantry refused to move without tank support. Tanks refused to advance without infantry. Murphy had broken the attack single-handedly. At 2:48 p.m., all 6 German tanks withdrew. They'd had enough. At 2:49 p.m., Murphy fired his last belt dry. At 2:50 p.m., he climbed off the M10. 10 seconds later, the tank destroyer exploded, a massive ammo cook-off that hurled the turret into the air. Had Murphy stayed on it seconds longer, he would have been killed instantly. At 2:52 p.m., American soldiers finally emerged from the tree line. They stared at him in disbelief. Smoke blackened. Bleeding. Limbs shaking. Still standing. Murphy limped back, refusing medical help. Get ready, he told his men. They might come again. But they never did. The Germans were shattered. Company B launched a counterattack at 2:55 p.m., pushing the broken enemy back through the woods and securing the clearing entirely by 3:30 p.m. Murphy finally allowed a medic to dress his wounds. But he refused evacuation. The numbers said it all. 1 man. 1.50 cal machine gun. 40 minutes of fire. Over 50 Germans killed by Murphy personally. Another 70 wounded. 6 tanks forced to withdraw. The entire German attack broken. The American line saved. The next morning, intelligence officers interviewed Murphy. His account, verified by multiple observers, was so extraordinary it spread through command channels instantly. On January 28, General Alexander Patch recommended him for the Medal of Honor. On June 2, 1945, at age 20, Audie Murphy became the most decorated American soldier of World War II. His Medal of Honor citation summed up the impossible. 1 man held off a German battalion. 1 man refused to quit. 1 man turned the tide. Audie Murphy stood where no one else could, and he held. Had Murphy stayed on at seconds longer, he would have been killed instantly. At 2:52 p.m., American soldiers finally emerged from the tree line. They stared at him in disbelief. Smoke blackened. Bleeding. Limbs shaking. Still standing. Murphy limped back, refusing medical help. Get ready, he told his men. They might come again. But they never did. The Germans were shattered. Company B launched a counterattack at 2:55 p.m., pushing the broken enemy back through the woods and securing the clearing entirely by 3:30 p.m. Murphy finally allowed a medic to dress his wounds. But he refused evacuation. The numbers said it all. 1 man. 1.50 cal machine gun. 40 minutes of fire. Over 50 Germans killed by Murphy personally. Another 70 wounded. 6 tanks forced to withdraw. The entire German attack broken. The American line saved. The next morning, intelligence officers interviewed Murphy. His account, verified by multiple observers, was so extraordinary it spread through command channels instantly. On January 28, General Alexander Patch recommended him for the Medal of Honor. On June 2, 1945, at age 20, Audie Murphy became the most decorated American soldier of World War II. His Medal of Honor citation summed up the impossible. 1 man held off a German battalion. 1 man refused to quit. 1 man turned the tide. Audie Murphy stood where no one else could, and he held.